Welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and this week we are doing shelf 2 of my month-long Read Your Bookshelf challenge thing. Again, I took this idea from the YouTuber Books with Emily Fox, and the goal is basically to pick a bookshelf and read books from that shelf for the week and vlog it. So this week we're doing shelf number 2, and this is kind of like my miscellaneous shelf. I have nonfiction on there, I've got horror, and then I've got like a couple of books that are kind of like miscellaneous genres that I don't typically read. And as always, I am going to be picking at least 3 books from this shelf and trying to read them this week. I think only one of the books on my shelf is from my TBR game, but let's get this camera flipped around and start talking about the books and which ones I think I'm going to read. It's none of this is guaranteed. Like last week I burnt out really bad, so if I start reading these books and I'm just not feeling it, I might switch something, but I am going to read books from this shelf for the week. Let's look at it. Alright, this is shelf number 2, and my dog is throwing a little bit of a fit in the background as usual. Let's take a little bit of a tour on how I have this set up. So from here to be not far from me are horror books. All of these are different variances of horror books. Then we have Lily and the Octopus and If We Were Villains are kind of like miscellaneous subjects. I told you I didn't have very many. Then we have mass market paperbacks. This little stack right here are the books by Black authors that I had pulled out last month, just to kind of make them a little bit of a priority read. And everything over here that way is nonfiction. So let's start with this stack. I do want to read something. I do want to read something by a Black author. It's going to be one of these two because these can serve a second purpose. It's not going to focus though, is it? Happening at least part of this week is the magical readathon Gear Up challenge, and it's a week-long readathon where you need to read 2 books based off various prompts of like gear that your character will need for the full-length readathon. One of the prompts for my character is I need to read a book with 2 S's in the title, and both of these, like Shut in Bones and Salvage in Bones. There's a lot of bones going on in these titles, but both of these fit that prompt. I'm just not sure which one I want to read, as always, but I will read one of these this week. This isn't going to be the first book I read this week, because the readathon doesn't start till the 14th. And then let's move the rest of these out of the way. From there, we're gonna go right here into horror and pull out No Longer Human by Junji Ito, which is a graphic novel, a horror graphic novel, and this one is on my Dungeon of Books TBR for this month to fulfill the prompt hardback. And then the final thing that I'm going to read is obviously going to be a nonfiction because that's the other major player on this shelf. This one I want to double down something else. I want to read one of the books that are part of the 22 books to read for 2022. To refresh you quickly on that, my options are Disfigured up here, No Visible Bruises, Ball of Fire, and Killers of the Flower Moon. As you guys know, if you've been watching my videos recently, I've been burnt out. And Disfigured, Killers of the Flower Moon, and No Visible Bruises are all very depressing subjects. So I'm gonna go ahead and read Ball of Fire. Ball of Fire is a biography on Lucille Ball, obviously, if you can't tell by the big old picture on the cover there. And I don't know, it just sounds like the least depressing of the options that I have because most of my nonfiction are kind of depressing. So I'm going to read this, mark another book off my 22 books to read for 2022, and make a very, very tiny amount of room on my nonfiction shelf. So once again, this is what we're starting with on this shelf. This one is the thickest, but it is a graphic novel, so it'll probably read the quickest. And I think I'm going to start with Ball of Fire, but it might not be the first one I finish. I usually read nonfiction slower and break it up across multiple days. So it'll be a surprise for all of us what the next clip is going to cover. Out of all of the books that could have possibly ever pulled me out of a reading slump, this was the last thing I expected. But it pulled me out of a reading slump, at least for now. I haven't watched Vampire Diaries in like 2 whole days because I've just been reading this. So is this great? No, it's good though. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to recommend this book, but we're going to try to talk about it a little bit. So this is obviously a biography of Lucille Ball. She starred as Lucy Ricardo in I Love Lucy, and that's what she's most known for, though she's done a lot of other work outside of that. She's a comedian, actress. You got it. I'm sure you've heard of her. Pretty much everybody, I think, knows who Lucille Ball is. I never been a big TV watcher, but I have seen plenty of episodes of I Love Lucy. I know all of the major things, but I'm not like a super fan of her or anything. I knew vague things about her life going into this, but most of this I did not know. Weirdly, I knew that she was the person responsible for getting Star Trek on the air, and so she's often considered the modern mother of sci-fi. I knew that going into there. Apparently that's a weird fact to know. Anyway, this biography reads really well. It reads in a very conversational tone, very easy to read. It doesn't feel dry or like just stating fact after fact after fact. And it could just be because she had an interesting life. She didn't have like a hugely dramatic field life, and there's not a lot of like external trauma. Like she had trauma, but it's not the type of trauma that's probably going to translate onto other people and like bring you down. Like, for example, a lot of starlets or whatever in their biographies or autobiographies, they're going to talk about sexual assault events that happens. You're not going to find that in here, so you're not going to have to experience that kind of trauma. As far as like the authorial tone, I think the author did a very decent, not like the best job ever, but a really decent job of staying neutral. Like, you couldn't really tell from reading the book if the author liked or hated Lucille Ball. He just kind of like presented the facts for the most part. The only time that blurred a little bit was Lucille is an older woman, so either she was like really a huge bitch as an elderly woman, or the author's bias was like playing through there. I've never read another biography by or about her, so I don't know if this one is like a great one or if it's mediocre or what. So that's why it's really hard to recommend this, is because there are so many biographies and even an autobiography about Lucille Ball, and this is the only one I've experienced in any format. I haven't even watched any of the movies, like the documentaries about it. So is this good? I don't know, but I enjoyed my time reading it. There is one thing, just one out of this whole book, which is pretty good, that I found like extremely offensive, and it's really the only reason I would steer you away from this. And it's gonna need a little bit of visual representation here. So I don't know if you can see that. it doesn't really matter if you can make that out, but you need to know that all of the chapter headings have a picture next to it. And one of the chapters, I found the picture that was used was extremely inappropriate. And basically the story behind that is Lucille Ball is like a young adult, like new adult, so 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, like right in there, before, like well before she got famous. She was living in New York and she was working as like a mannequin, if that makes sense. Weird job, but basically stores for wealthy clientele would hire women who look like famous clients and have them like model clothes and just stand there and look pretty, and you could get your famous client in, show them that model, and they could be like, oh yes, I do want to buy that because this woman looks exactly like me and it looks great on her. So that's what she was doing, but she needed like a side hustle to fill in her income, so she did a lot of like photography, modeling, and just like any sort of like modeling or acting gig she could get. And during this time she had some nude photos taken, which perfectly fine, but it is stated in this autobiography that that was one of the few things she regretted in life, was having nude photos taken of her, or agreeing to take or have nude photos taken of her, which is fine. Like, she gets older, she was like, hey, this was kind of a stupid decision I did in my teens, and this has haunted her. She was like, those photos would crop up in her 70s, haunting her. And so she's like, understandably was like, this is one of the few things I regret. And this asshole of an author uses one of those nude photos that he has just stated that she regrets having, and is mad that they keep popping up as the header of that chapter. Like, you're talking about her early adult years where there are thousands of photos of her in fully dressed, and you choose one of the photos that she has repeatedly and publicly stated she regrets taking and wish didn't exist. The audacity. The audacity of this man. But yeah, that was really the only thing that pissed me off. Everything else I enjoyed. I had a good time reading. I'm gonna put this probably at 4 stars, because it wasn't perfect, but it did get me out of a reading slump. So there you go. Moving on to the next book on the shelf, and I'll be back in a little while to talk about it. No Longer Human by Junji Ito. I did finish this yesterday, and let's just say that this was kind of a bad choice for me right now. This is a manga. You read it backwards. This was an adaptation of a novel by a guy named Osamu Dazai, I think is how you say his name, and it was adapted into graphic novel form. Now, I understand everybody likes Junji Ito. His artwork is great. He usually does like really creepy things. This is not creepy. This is not horror. This is just bottled depression. This is like a giant trauma dump is basically what this is. And I'm going to tell you my star rating and then kind of explain why. So I gave this a 2-star because I personally did not like this story. There are no redeeming qualities in this story. Like, is the writing good? Yes. Is the artwork great? Yes. But I did not enjoy my time with this story. So, my explanation is going to require some, like, I guess they're plot spoilers. So if you really want to go in this purely blind, do that. Fast forward to the next book, leave the video, whatever you need to do, but I will have some like plot point spoilers. I'm not going to go into any details or anything like that, so I'm not going to just like straight up spoil the whole book, but there will be some plot point spoilers, and there are content warnings coming up in what I'm about to say. Like, the content of this book is dark and depressing. So this follows a guy named Yozo Oba, and from like childhood to adulthood, whatever, follows pretty much his entire life. And this kid has a bad life. He has social anxiety and he doesn't like being around people, so he creates this like clowning, class clown personality to deal with that. And like the social anxiety is just portrayed in a uncomfortable way to begin with, but that's beside the point because he is molested by a lot of people as a child. So we get to start off with that, and y'all know that I do not like that in books. If this was an actual novel, I would have DNF'd it, but fortunately with a graphic novel you could skip past those parts really quick. Then he goes on to have like one friend. Really, he only really has one friend, and then that friend commits suicide after getting a prank played on him, which is all on page. All of this is on page. Then he is living with distant relatives. I don't know if it's like college or what, but he's living with distant relatives, and he has two cousins, two girl cousins. He is in a relationship, or in a sexual relationship at least, with both of those girl cousins, which A, incest, ew. B, he gets them both pregnant, and one of them murders the other, just like slits her stomach open, all on page. So rough start to life. He's got really bad depression. There's alcohol abuse, substance abuse. He gets addicted to opium. He's in a lot of really, really bad relationships with women, and pretty much all of those women end up dying in some horrible way. There are a lot of there are a lot of suicide attempts, where it's like a lover's suicide, and he ends up surviving, but the women end up dying in like really grotesque ways. So this is trauma porn. It's really depressing to read. There's no happy endings here. This is just straight up, this guy has a horrible, horrible freaking life, and it gets worse and it stays bad consistently throughout his life. There's not, like I said, there's not horror in that. This is not, to me, a horror book outside of like the horrifics of some people's real lives. But yeah, this 2 stars. I don't recommend it to anybody, but if you like this kind of thing, then maybe it's for you. That's on you, but not my favorite Junji Ito. I want to read the one with holes. So that's all I gotta say. Okay, more books to talk about. I did finish Salvage the Bones by Jessamine Ward, and I don't know, I didn't like this book, and there were quite a few reasons why. Let's start with the fact that the premise of this book is a very, very poor family in Mississippi are about to be hit by like a huge, severe hurricane. Think Hurricane Katrina, because it is Hurricane Katrina. So, and they can't evacuate because they're poor. They don't have the money. Like, that's the problem with a lot of these hurricanes, is people are like, oh, just evacuate. It's like, not everybody can afford that, assholes. But yeah, so they can't evacuate, and then like bad shit goes down, and like the worst case happens during the hurricane, right? So that's the premise of the story. This, like, that's when the hurricane starts. So what is this? What is this part of the story? Well, what that part of the story is mostly animal abuse, unfortunately. One of the main plot lines of this story is the narrator's brother has a pit bull who has just had puppies, and the animal, like, I understand that a lot of people in like rural areas like this fight pit bulls. Like, I get that. I still don't want to read about it. So you've got like situations where he's talking about fighting the pit bulls, where he actually fights pit bulls, and that's on page. And while I know realistically these things happen, I still don't want to read about it, and that's the point. There's also a lot of like animal abuse through ignorance, I guess is what you would put it, is where he can't afford to take his dog to the vet. So the puppies are dying because he doesn't know how to take care of them, because this is a child, and the father in this situation doesn't give a shit about the dog. So this is a child, and the puppies are dying, and he's saying like, oh, they're dying of parvo, for example, and he may think that these dogs have parvo, but that's not possible, if it makes sense. Like, the reader, if you really know anything about dogs, know that that's not what is killing the puppies, but like the character has no idea. And then like he almost kills his own dog by giving it horse dewormer, because somebody else tells him to, and it's like oh my god. Oh no. The other thing that just this could be a me thing, but the language of this book, like the writing style, Jessamine Ward's writing style is beautiful, and it's so poetic, and it's so just like, I don't know what to call it other than like highbrow, where it's like this beautiful, lyrical, like really intelligent writing style, but the situations don't fit the writing. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that somebody who is poor can't be intelligent. It's just the writing style doesn't match with what we're actually reading, or at least it didn't for me. Maybe other people, I mean, there seems to be like a lot of really good reviews on this, so maybe it does work for other people, but it just felt like instead of really getting into the story, I always felt above the story because of the language choices. A good kind of comparison to what I'm thinking is like Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, where you get like into the character's head through her language and how she talks about things and how she feels about things. And this one is very like detached from the situation instead of like really getting inside that character's head, because even like the dialogue, the language of the dialogue is different than how her inner monologue is written, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but yes, not for me. Obviously, huge content warnings about animal abuse and neglect, and I don't know. I think I'm gonna give it 3 stars because the writing is beautiful. Like, straight up, the writing of this is beautiful, but it wasn't for me. I also, while we're here, want to note that this week is the Aurelium Gear Up Readathon, and I needed to read 2 books for that between the 14th and the 20th. So this was one of the books. This fits one of the prompts, and it's for my conduit of a spell book where I need a book with 2 S's in the title. So we've got S and S, 2 S's in the title. I did read another book for the other prompt already, but it wasn't from the same shelf, so I am going to mention it here, but I'm not going to talk about the book. My other prompt for my legacy is to read the first book in a series, And let me tell you, I don't want to start new series right now. So what I did is I grabbed Monstrous Volume 1, which is a graphic novel series, off of the shelf above this. And I did read this, but like I said, I'm not going to talk about it in here because this isn't the right shelf. So it's Friday, which means I probably have time to read one more short book, graphic novel, something along that realm of something short. And let me tell you, No Longer Human was depressing, Salvage the Bones was depressing, Monstrous was even kind of depressing. Like, the artwork was beautiful, but the story was depressing. So before I put myself in another reading slump, need to read something that's gonna make me happy. I know just the thing, because I don't know about you, but I have authors that it's like, I know I'm gonna read from this author and it's gonna make me happy. And for me, Chuck Tingle is that author. So this is Straight by Chuck Tingle. This is a horror story by him. Now, Chuck Tingle usually writes like silly erotica, silly queer erotica, and like with really like ridiculous names. Like the last one I read was Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasophilus. So like that. You've got a lot of them that are like pounded in the butt by my existential crisis. Like that's the kind of things that Chuck Tingle writes. But this is an attempt at horror instead of like erotica. And this has a ridiculous premise, and I know it's going to be wholesome, and I know it's going to be funny, which I think is exactly what I need. I don't think this is actually going to be scary horror, more like hilarious horror. Even the premise sounds fun. So basically, it's one night of year, the vast majority of humans transform into hateful, rage-fueled zombies, and no one knows really why it happens, but they do know that a very specific demographic is affected by this, and that specific demographic is cisgendered straight people. Tell me that doesn't sound stupid as hell. And it's gonna make me happy. Just cis straight people turning into zombies, and queer people running away in fear. The parallels you can draw to society with that one. All right, Straight by Chuck Tingle. This was just so fantastic. It's silly, but it's also like meaningful. So basically the premise of this is once every year, because of some cosmic space magic, all of the straight people in the world go batshit crazy, like turn into like zombies. You have if you're straight and this happens to you, you have no memory of it, and your goal, and your really only goal, is to either walk around stupid, or if you come into contact with a gay person, queer person, you want to murder them. So there you go. Is the science in this book good? No, that's not the point. So if you're one of those sticklers for like feasible sci-fi, this isn't going to give you that. But this takes place in year 3, and our main character and his buddies are all queer, and they are going to the desert. They've rented an Airbnb in the desert, and they're gonna like spend the 24 hours kind of just alone in the desert, away from society. There are like enclaves and stuff that you can go to, like Palm Springs, to like be locked behind walls and party the 24 hours away, but they don't have the money to do that, and they could stay at home. There is a vaccine that straight people can take that they don't turn into crazy killing monsters, but anti-vaxxers, come on, we all know how that's going to go. So they're just like, okay, we'll just go to the middle of nowhere in the desert, Airbnb, stay quiet, have a nice friends vacation, no big deal. which obviously this kind of turns to like a cabin in the woods type situation where they're alone and all the crazies come for them. That's really all I'm going to get into because it's very short. But there are two real themes to this book, and that is that the queer community needs to get together and support each other. Like, obviously straight people are going to think of themselves first, so the queer community needs to support the queer community. And then the other theme is performative allyship, where people are like, no, I support queer people, and then don't actually do anything to support queer people at all. So overall, I really enjoyed my time with this. It is 100% not something to take seriously. Like, do not go into this book as a straight person being automatically offended by it. It's silly. It's not ever going to happen, but it's taking something silly and turning it into a good message. But I just know there are gonna be straight people be like, how dare you? Oh, somebody missed the point. But yeah, very, very much enjoyed this. If you're ever been interested in reading Chuck Tingle but don't want to read erotica, 100% recommend this. Very, very good. It made my day. I love it. I love it. Anyway, that is the end of this video. We have completed 2 out of 4 shelves. Yay me. If you've made it this far in the video and you want to leave a comment but can't think of anything to say, leave me the most depressing emoji that you can find, right? Because I've read a lot of depressing books in this video. Like, why am I doing this to myself? Let's hope next week's shelves are happier. I think one of them already is depressing. But yeah. Let's get some joy. Let's go get some sunshine, get some joy. I'm going to the dog park today with the puppy because it's lovely outside. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.